All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our participants from around the globe. Welcome to our first installment of the Students Conclave session with Monash Motorsport. My name is Kathy D'Souza, and I'm the event chair of the Formula Bharat competition, which is the host for the Students Conclave series. Before we begin today's session, and while we still have participants joining in, I wanted to quickly introduce you the Formula Bharat competition and our various initiatives for this competition season. Formula Bharat is an Indian Formula student competition hosted by the parent company Curiosum Tech, and it was launched in 2017 primarily by the alumni of FS teams across the country. Today, the competition hosts both combustion and electric categories. Our on-site competition in 2020 saw a participation of 78 teams in total and a recent virtual event at 83 teams. The on-site competition typically takes place in the third week of January at the Curry Motor Speedway in Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu. Our 21-22 season calendar is currently packed with events geared towards a student learning experience, from virtual racing to an EV concept challenge to hosting 2 sets of Formula Bharat events, virtual and on-site. This season is going to be an interesting one. We have also launched a few initiatives as well to support the FS ecosystem. One of it is the Students Conclave initiative along with the Formula Bharat Academy series. This past week, we opened registrations for our first event, Revit, a virtual racing competition in collaboration with IRE Sports. It is an opportunity for teams to focus on its vehicle dynamic setup and driver training on a virtual platform. At the same time, it provides a good occasion for student team engagement. Registrations end on May 2nd, and you can find more information on the event at formulabharat.com/revit. We have also launched registrations for our annual FS Electric Vehicle Concept Challenge. If you're planning to switch to electric, this is a recommendation towards a 3-step competition process. The competition requires you to not just present your EV design concept, but also provide your strategies towards team management and procurement. Registrations end on June 4th, and you can find more information on the event on formulabharat.com/FSEV. Thank you for your time and attention. On behalf of Formula Bharat, we would like to thank Monash Motorsports for their efforts towards the Students Conclave initiative and to Claude Ruel for launching the same. Now on to you, Scott and Michael.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Excellent. So thank you, Claude, and thank you, Kathy, for inviting us to this event. It's a real privilege to be able to talk to so many teams from the Formula Bharat and Indian competitions. And it's also great to see some Australian and international, European and British teams, and maybe an American team or two in the mix. We've tried to develop a workshop that's quite interactive today. We didn't want to just be talking at you nonstop and telling you stuff. We wanted to really have teams reflect on some of the issues around the way you manage the competition and the choices that you make in running this project. So we've entitled today's presentation, How to Formula Student, an interactive workshop with Monash Motorsport. Before we get into it, I would like to acknowledge the people of the Kulin Nations on whose land Monash Motorsport study and work. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. To take you through the workshop agenda, we've split it into 2 parts, the first hour and the second hour. I'm going to deliver a quick welcome. We're then going to have Mike talk about some housekeeping, particularly how we're going to operate the Zoom today and what we'd like you to do to be able to engage effectively with the presenters and also with your teammates and other teams. We'll introduce ourselves, so you'll meet our presenters that we've got on board today from Monash Motorsport. We'll talk a little bit about where we're from. So we've got Jamie from the Faculty of Engineering to explain a little bit more about engineering at Monash and also Monash University. I'm going to take you through a little bit of an abbreviated history of Monash Motorsport, focusing back on our earlier days, given that Formula Bharat is in the early stages of its kind of competition evolution. So I'll give you that little bit of a history. And then we're going to share with you a quick analysis that we did of the Formula Bharat competition and uncover some kind of secrets that we think teams should be thinking about and be aware of. Then we're going to get into some interactive activities. We're going to have a think about first impressions, how we make first impressions, what control you have over the quality of that impression. And we're going to do a little bit of an audit of how you went this time. We're then going to look at brainstorm some of the best things in Formula SA Many of them, or Formula Student, many of them are actually free, and it's up to the teams to decide whether they want to make the effort and just organise themselves to actually ensure that they do get to enjoy some of these amazing things that can be part of your team and part of your team's culture. So we're going to brainstorm some ideas around that and then review that. We'll take a quick 5-minute rest break, probably an hour into this session, and then we're going to get back to work. We've got a few more interactive activities. The first being, if only we had X. We're going to get you to assess your project resources and hopefully highlight any gaps in the fundamental requirements of the things that we've assessed teams as needing to have access to be able to compete in this competition reliably. We're then going to have a talk about your greatest resource and try to calculate how much experience your team is accruing and what is the average level of experience within your team. The final activity is titled Time is Not on Your Side. So we're going to look at when you as a team are choosing to Formula Student and why you're making the decision to work at the times that you do. We're going to do some quick conclusions perhaps, and then we'll have a question time at the end, probably running over the kind of scheduled time if we have to. And we're going to break down with a couple of our different representatives here today into like a business breakout room, an operations breakout room, and an advisory breakout room with Mike and myself. And if Claude and Kathy can hang around, we could probably have a room with them doing some questions as well. So Mike, did you want to talk about housekeeping and how we're going to run today, please?
Sure, and thanks, Scott, and welcome, everyone. I'll just take a few minutes to talk about how we'd like to run the session. Of course, we may run up against bandwidth issues and have to alter this, but first off, we'd ask everybody, if you can, to share your video and be ready to share your audio. I appreciate that everybody may have other things in the background, and we ask that you not intrude into the presentation, but be ready to unmute yourself. We'd like to do this as close to face as we can, which I'll discuss here in a moment. You'll notice that everybody on the motorsport team, Monash Motorsport team, I should say, has a virtual background insofar as possible. It's true that not all computers can handle this, but what this enables is both a particular look and a uniformity on the team, but also it pushes some of the processing resources onto your PC and takes a little bit of load off your internet bandwidth. So this is a recommended approach in general, not just in team events like this, but this is how Monash approaches instruction over Zoom anyway. We ask that everybody raise their hand. If you're not familiar with this, not everybody's from the same background in terms of using Zoom, but down at the bottom of your screen, there is, among other options, there is a reactions. And then there's an option to raise your hand. We ask that if you would like to address the cohort, to raise your hand first, and we'll take your questions in the order that they are asked. Kind of hand in hand with that, we ask that not everyone chat. We're not going to be monitoring the chat for questions. If you have a question we'd like you, or a contribution, we'd like you to raise your hand. It's fine for you to speak to individuals in individual chat, but we ask that people refrain from using the everyone chat. It's kind of like speaking out and interrupting a class. It can be distracting from the presentation. One thing we'd like everybody to get onto basically now is to, as we have done, you can see how I've put my team in parentheses before my name. We ask that everybody take the time now and use their sort of abridged or shortened team name, however many letters that might be, in brackets similarly. What that allows us to do is to see which team you're on, but it also allows us as administrators of Zoom for everybody to be grouped alphabetically, so you all appear in our list in the same order. So if everybody could take the time now, go down to participants, and beside your name, you should be able to click on more, and then rename. If you rename yourself accordingly, that would be a real help for us. And then you can have your first or preferred name as the other thing that shows up in your name. Once you've done this, you can, if you could use the green tick, which similarly under reactions, if you could just toggle yourself over to green tick and leave it there. That way we can get an idea of who's finished and how quickly we can move on. So if everybody could do that now. Yeah, thanks for that, Kathy. And then tick over to a green tick and we'll just kind of watch those numbers. The quicker we can do this, the better. See somebody's giving a thumbs up. If you could tick over to the green tick, that'd be a big help. That persists, and we also get a tally of the number of people who've done that. Thanks so much. So we can see those numbers rising now. Have a look around at your other teammates and make sure you're using the same abbreviation. It looks like everybody's reasonably consistent there, which is great to see. So we still got some people who have kind of numbers before the names and things like that. If we get people to switch over, that would be of help. Yeah, maybe while we do that, we can probably do introductions, I guess. Scott, does that make sense to go to the next page?
I think so, yeah. So I think everybody knows what they're doing and just trying to find the activities within Zoom, or maybe they've walked away from the computer. So I might just click ahead to meeting our presenters and who we are. So my name is Scott. I'm one of the academic advisors of Monash Motorsport. I was a previous team member of Monash Motorsport back in its very early days. When I show you the history, there are a few shots with my head in the background or around the car, so you might be able to pick me out in some of those old photos. Been with the team for 21 years now, and I teach design units within the Faculty of Mechanical and Aerospace. And yeah, I'm now director of our 15 student teams at last count that we have, doing all kinds of things from rockets to Nova Rovers to brewing beer to blacksmithing. So yeah, I really do have an awesome job, but Monash Motorsport was our earliest team and is still our biggest and arguably most successful. So it's always a pleasure to work with them. Good to be here today to share experience, and I'll hand over to Mike.
Thanks, Scott. Hi, everyone. Michael Crocco. I've joined the uni the last couple of years, but my alma mater didn't actually have a Formula student team. I studied in Canada, and we had other focuses for our student teams. I, however, spent 16 years in the automotive industry, working across design as well as testing for companies such as Honda and Toyota. So I then transitioned to teaching, and also with Scott alongside and at times separate, have taught design at Monash, and I'm working in an education design role at this stage. Yeah, so my advising capacity has been a little bit different from a typical one, and I've gotten involved in not necessarily the day-to-day, but talking a little bit more sort of long-term planning and some of those sort of aspects of advisory work. Really happy, as I mentioned before, to be here with you today. And I'll hand over to Jamie.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thanks, Scott. My name's Jamie, and I'm the Student Recruitment Manager for the Faculty of Engineering at Monash University in Australia. I used to travel quite a bit to various markets, including India. I've been there several times, and it's always terrific to talk to the families and students there. We haven't been doing so much travel recently, of course, but it's great to see you online. I look forward to talking to you in a little bit about a couple of our course offerings.
Thanks, Jamie. I'll hand over to Jack now.
Yeah, it's lovely to see everyone. Thank you very much for coming. My name's Jack Church. I'm the CEO of the team this year. I'm studying a Bachelor of Mechanical Engineering and a Bachelor of Commerce, majoring in management. I joined the team in 2019 in both a technical and business capacity, in kind of the search for extracurricular activities that could complement both sides of my degree. Since then, I've gained expertise in stakeholder relations, marketing, and high performance management. And this has been done through my role as the head of our business department last year and moving into my current role as well. I'll pass over to Mal now.
Thanks, Jack. My name is Malha, and this year, in addition to Jack, I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Monash Motorsport. I joined the team at the same time as Jack a few years ago in a technical role. And since then, I have also been a finance manager of the team, as well as an electrical systems engineer. And that's given me a broad overview of how the team operates. And I've had experience in a lot of the team's day-to-day operations, as well as working through some of the processes that are required to maintain a Formula student team. So I'll now pass it over to Rash and April.
Hi everyone, I'm Rashmita, and I'm the Autonomous Systems Manager for this year. Similarly to Jack, I joined the team in 2019 in both a technical and business role. And over the past few years, I've had the opportunity to briefly be with electrical systems as well. Yeah, and it's been a really great experience so far. I'll just hand over to April now.
Hi everybody, I'm April. I also joined the team in 2019. I'm currently studying a Bachelor of Mechanical Engineering and a Bachelor of Biomedical Science at Monash University. I am primarily involved in the aerodynamic manufacturing of our cars. I have spent some time as composite structures principal engineer. So my focus is mainly on the practical and material aspects of using composites in our aerodynamic manufacture. And being on the team has been such a great experience, and I've learned so much about who I am as a person and what I love doing. And I'm sure you all have a similar experience in Formula Student about really being challenged.
Great, thank you so much, presenters. I'm going to hand over to Jamie now. He's just going to talk for a couple of minutes about engineering at Monash University. Thanks, Jamie. I can advance the slides when you're ready.
Thank you very much. Actually, we'll just hold on that current slide, Scott. It's a great introduction to Monash Engineering. This is our new Woodside building for technology and design, and it's really a view into what the new way of learning at Monash looks like. Of course, in engineering, you're going to have a broad range of experiences. That image on the right there you can see is the equivalent of a modern lecture theatre, where not only does the academic talk to the students, but the students are required to talk to the academic. So it's a two-way street, and that encourages a more engaged form of learning. And that's going to take me to the first part. I'm going to talk about three things briefly. What we do in research and how that brings us infrastructure. I'm going to talk about our courses, and then I'm going to talk about the professional development that we offer, including such great clubs and teams as Monash Motorsport. So our rankings are a reflection of our capacity and capability with our academic staff, and of course the way that students engage in that process as well with our academics. You can see some of our rankings here. We're number 1 in Australia for chemical, for metallurgical, 2nd to 5 for mechanical, remote sensing, energy science, civil water, and then there are our QS world subject rankings. Now, what this enables us to do is get funding, and that funding enables us to make great discoveries that are addressing global challenges, as you can see, water, energy, sustainable cities, all of these sorts of things that are important to all of us. And of course, it brings us infrastructure. Now, that infrastructure is not just for our researchers and academics. As you can see by Woodside, it's also for you. So if we can have the next slide, I'll show you a couple of other things as well. We've got a brand new robotics lab that is just being built and will be opening up very shortly. We have a large wind tunnel that students can do their aerodynamic testing in. And we have a brilliant maker space that is actually the home of the Monash Motorsport team, with a whole range of facilities that students can access to design, build, break, and build again their prototypes. So that's point 1. The next slide, please, Scott. So I'm going to briefly now just reflect on the programs that we have on offer. I think the Master of Professional Engineering is going to be the best for students coming out of India and are looking to upscale and obtain a master program. We have the Master of Professional Engineering with 3-year and 2-year options. The 2-year option is for students that are graduating with a Bachelor of Engineering. If you're coming from a STEM related background, then we do have the 3-year option as well. You can see the specializations that we offer, including chemical, civil, electrical, materials, and mechanical. They're fairly broad, but you'll also observe within those that we're focusing on specific areas as well, such as food production, such as sustainable infrastructure. We've got systems and networks for electrical materials. We're very strong in 3D printing, nano and the like. And then, of course, mechanical, advanced manufacturing, sustainability, and robotics. So we have a great program. I'll just talk to you very briefly about that now. Thanks, Scott. We've got a course map here to show you, and it basically gives you an idea of what is offered in the Master of Professional Engineering. You can see the entry level 1 for the students that come from STEM have a year of foundation units. And then when you go into years 2 and 3 for the students that have graduated from the Bachelor of Engineering, you've got your specialist knowledge units, you've got enhancement units, some of which you can choose yourself to tailor your degree. And then there's research units and design. Now, the research is important because that will enable you to find out what is happening, what is the latest developments in your area of engineering, and that can lead to better design and project work. Can I have the next slide, please, Scott? So I'm going to talk about the third part now. I've given you a sense of our academic capabilities, the infrastructure that it delivers, and the fine curriculum that we're able to provide to our students. That's just a part of the equation. The other piece is the applied learning. And of course, this is where our teams and clubs come in. And it is a requirement by Engineers Australia that you undertake continuous professional development. Now, this actually sits outside of the formal learning, and you'll be required to undertake 420 hours, half of which needs to be engineering related. The other half can be any part-time work. For me, the best way for you to accumulate those hours is to join a team, because no one does teams better than Monash University in Australia. And you can quote me on that statement. We've got the largest range. And of course, we've got some real champions in the mix, including motorsport. I'll go to the next slide and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then I'll wrap it up and hand it back to Scott, Mike, and the Monash Motorsport team. 28 teams and clubs. Each of the broad specializations has its own club. And then we have many teams that we compete in. So we've got teams, as you can see on the list there, like Precious Plastics. We've got RoboGals, which is a global initiative encouraging young women into robotics. We've got the Brew Lab, where they brew kombucha, but also a little beer as well. And a whole range of other teams. So these teams, as you'll hear from Monash Motorsport, are about working together. Obviously, as engineers, you do a lot of project work. You'll be working in teams. You've got to develop your skills. And of course, these teams will also give you connections into industry, into expertise, and will help prepare you for not only the workforce in Australia, but we think the global workforce, where across so many countries, the demand for engineers is really fantastic. So I'm going to leave it at that. I hope that you get the most out of the rest of the session. And I thank you for your time this afternoon. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks so much, Jamie, for popping in and telling us a little bit more about how students can join Monash University potentially as a master's student. On behalf of all the teams, we're very keen to have master's students joining our teams, and we've got a range of ways that they can actually interact, either as a full team member or as kind of short-term projects. So yeah, highly encourage you to look at those options.
Thank you, Scott.
Right. Sorry, Scott, I'm going to interrupt before we continue on. I've just had a notice that some people are having lagging slides. Could I just get everybody briefly tick a yes under your reactions, meaning the green tick, if the slides have been advancing for you, and please pick the no if they haven't. I just want to understand the depth of this issue. A lot of people are yeses. So it looks like some isolated incidents of slides not Yeah, so single incident, one or two. Okay, so pretty high ratio of slides working for people. To those of you who aren't not sure the best course of action, other than perhaps stopping your own video and looking at, this is likely a bandwidth issue. So just looking at what other processes are running on your computer. Sorry, I don't mean to delay us much further, Scott.
Thanks, Mike. All good. Thank you for the heads up. I did notice that, yeah, they seem to be advancing a little bit slower for Jamie than for myself. All right, I'm going to give a quick history of Monash Motorsport now. So let's dive right in. If I can advance the slide myself. So our team was established in 2000. Back then we had quite a small team, about 16 members in that initial team. And being a new team, there were lots of things that we didn't know how to do. We had very few resources. We didn't have a great workshop. We barely had somewhere to keep the car. Because of all of these challenges and us not really knowing how to manage or run a project, our first car was finished late, pretty much at the competition. We did manage to pass scrutineering and compete in all of the events, but unfortunately we broke twice in endurance. In those days in Australia, because we're a small competition, we actually had 2 heats of endurance, so we had 2 goes of it. So that was relatively disappointing after such a big year to put together a first year car, but we went away pretty keen to improve the following year. So when we came back in 2000, we'd seen some really fast American cars at our first ever competition, and we tried to come back and be UTA, who were the top team at the time. So we had a turbocharged dry sump car with crazy bodywork and some very novel team haircuts, as you can see there. It was very complicated. We tried to do too much, and once again, even though we worked really hard and were starting to grow the team, the car was also finished late. We did get out on track and pass scrutineering, but again, we failed in endurance twice. And so it was another very disappointing year for that team. In 2002, we tried to learn from some of those lessons. We recruited a bigger team. We'd also seen UTA running wings overseas, so we tried to do that as well. And I think we did a pretty good job of the wings. The car was finished a lot earlier. It was well tested. It was quite fast, but we passed scrutineering, but we missed a little bit of checking and refinement and taking care of all the small details, which resulted in us once again failing 2 heats of endurance. And we would have been in the hunt for a podium at that competition, which was quite disappointing. In 2003, we tried to improve upon that car again and had even bigger wings. Again, it was finished early and well tested, quite fast at one autocross. But it actually caught fire in endurance due to a few little oversights in our testing, which I can show you in a second. And we thought we'd go to FS UK. We had an opportunity to do that, to check out that competition, and we also broke in endurance there as well. So I'll just show you a video of one of the endurance cars. Sorry, I forgot to optimize for video, so that might have been a little bit glitchy. Trust me, the driver was okay, and that lady screaming was my mother that you could hear in the background there. So that was, again, a hugely disappointing year for us. I'm sorry, Bharat, whoops. So unfortunately, we doubled down the next year and returned in 2004 with less team members. We were struggling to retain interest in the program, given that we'd spent all this time and effort and money and continued to have disappointing results. This year, we actually overextended by a long way. We spent a lot of money that the team didn't actually have, so they put the team into debt. We went with a carbon fiber monocoque for some reason, even though we didn't really have the facilities to do so. Again, the car was finished late. It never drove before competition, and we failed scrutineering when one of the ergo judges stood in the car and delaminated our chassis audibly, to the shock of the team and all the other scrutineers around. So they didn't allow this car to ever hit the track. We did repair it later on after the competition and went out and drove it and promptly broke lots of driveline components as well. So that car did a total of 10 kilometers in its lifetime after the competition. And based on that track record and that history of having built 5 cars and having failed year after year after year to just fulfill the basics of the competition, and having run up a huge amount of debt for the team and the university, the uni, unsurprisingly, was keen to cancel the project. The team members were complaining, they were bullying each other, everybody was depressed and had failed all of their university subjects. Does this sound familiar to anyone? I wanted to kind of show you where we'd come from, because we had a really tough start, like many of the current Formula Bharat teams are having, not getting their cars together, not finishing them, not getting through scrutineering and not getting out on track, let alone finishing all the events. So when we talk about the things that today that we want you to do and want you to think about, trust us that we know what you're going through, and we've been there, and we've been a very small team with very limited resources. And over time, we've battled our way out of that hole. And hopefully we have some ideas to share with you that will help other teams make it out as well, and start to develop a project that is really positive and that everyone gets behind, and you finish the end of the year and you're happy with your results. So as I mentioned, my introduction to SAE was building 5 cars, all of them failing to finish endurance multiple times. And then after that point, it was basically a breaking point, and we had a real reckoning, and we sat down and we looked at our competition history and our results, and we had a serious think about how we were approaching it and why we were doing the things that we were doing and what we were prioritizing. And we made a lot of changes. And there were things that we did in there that went against a lot of tradition in Formula SE, went against a lot of established norms, and but we had to kind of change something, or else we were just going to keep repeating the same mistakes over and over and over again. We had a lot of resistance from people around the university, from other teams, from design judges, sometimes from scrutineers. But 4 years later, we won our first competition. A year after that, we were ranked number 2 in the world. And currently, maybe 15 years later, we're ranked number 1 for C and number 3 for E cars. And we've also managed to pull together a driverless car, which is very competitive, and we haven't had a chance to actually race that one yet. So we've got a history of being able to come back from this. And in the next 90 minutes, we want to share with you some of the things that we thought about and some of the approaches we took to be able to dig our way out of that hole, and hopefully show you how you can also achieve some of your team's goals in this competition. So that's what we're here, that's where we're coming from, and that's what we're here to do. So let's get into it. I just threw in here as well the data. If you want to jump onto the world rankings, you can actually see those results there and where we've come from. So feel free to check that out. That's for C car and that's for E car. Everyone should be familiar with the world rankings, which brings us to Formula Bharat. This is a competition that myself and our team have been monitoring kind of at a distance for some time. And it's real. We've been curious to see Claude and Pat's involvement with the teams and the reports that they've brought back and shared with the Formula student community, which we've been following. It is on our radar as a competition that Monash Motorsport would like to attend in the future with at least one of our cars. We're not sure exactly which car at this stage. So we've been kind of keeping a weather eye out and watching the development of the event. We're really impressed with all the work that Kathy has done to pull this event together and to have such a great venue, and the professionalism that all of the media and the website and photography and everything, all of that kind of stuff is amazing and is at a really high level, and is the kind of quality that we expect from an event like Formula Student Germany. There's really a lot of thought and time and effort that's gone into all of that planning, and also Claude and Pat and others supporting on the mentoring and the design judging and all those other things. So from the outside, it looks amazing from the top level and as an outsider. But some cracks started to appear, and I saw some real weaknesses when we started to dig in under the surface of all this lovely gloss and photos and cheering and celebrations and awards. Once we got into the details, we're a little bit shocked at what we found. So Formula Bharat has a secret, and we're going to out you all on that secret here today. And then we want to work with you to figure out how we overcome these issues. This is the secret. On this page here, we've got the overall results in the world rankings. This is where I pulled them from for Formula Bharat in 2018, 2019 in the middle, and 2020 on the right-hand side. Kathy, can I ask a question? Was 2020 impacted by COVID in terms of competition entries, do you think? It wasn't.
No, it happened in Jan, so 2019 is the season.
I wouldn't have thought so either. And so, look, this is something I'm sure Claude and Kathy are aware of, and I wanted to really hold it up for all of the teams to kind of see and think about. But you have a problem here. And if you're not familiar with reading these rankings and these results, so these are competition results. And what all those little horizontal dashes mean is that the teams did not place in these events. So if we look at 2018, only the teams up the very top where they've got numbers, where they've got placings, actually scored in those events. The vast majority of teams, it appears, did not get out on track. A few made it out to endurance, where we can see those sevens, kind of like here, later in, on the last day of competition, but the vast majority of teams didn't pass scrutineering or brake or noise, or were not finished. They've done the static events, they've done costs, business presentation and design. Some of them haven't even shown up for design. So you have a problem, but look, that was your second competition, and so that's excusable. Okay, you had 2017, which I don't have the results for, but 2018, okay, second competition. All right, by third competition, we're not really seeing any significant improvement here. If anything, there's less teams that have made it out on track. And then in 2020, we've got a significant reduction in the number of teams competing, and maybe a slight improvement on the number of teams that have made it out on track, but still pretty bad. So just to run the numbers for you, of 54 teams in that second comp in 2018, 40 of them appear to have not passed tech and made it out on track, which is 74%. 3 teams only scored in all events. So if you were to score in all event, you pretty much would have finished on the podium. To look at 2019, again, about 40 teams didn't make it out on track, with around 4 teams scoring in each event. And then in 2020, we had 26 teams not making it out on track, and still only about 3 teams scoring in every event. So this is a real problem, and the problem here is a project management one. It's not whether you've got the right roll centers, it's not perhaps whether you've got rod ends in bending, or whether you've got the highest modulus of carbon fiber or the best aerodynamic package. The simple fact is these teams are not running their projects in such a way that they can finish a car in time, that they can test it and make it reliable, and then they can pass scrutineering and all the required tests to even attempt the on-track events. So that is the problem, and that's what we want to kind of address and have you thinking about with some of the issues that we're going to raise today and some of the actions we're going to raise today. This is not going to be really highly technical. This is going to be more project management and basics and simple things. So maybe you look at this and go, well, this is just Formula student. This is representative. Every competition is like this. So I thought I'd bring up some other competitions and we can have a look at as a benchmark. So these are the Australian 2019 competition results, and they're split into combustion at the top and electric at the bottom. So if we look at those results, 6 of our teams in combustion and 8 in electric scored in all events. So that's 14. 1 team in combustion didn't pass tech, Chennai, and 5 teams in electrical didn't pass tech either. So pretty good proportions there. And then we've got a mid-range who failed a few events as well. If we go to Formula Student Germany, arguably the highlight of the Formula Student calendar worldwide, the toughest competition in the world. How many do we have? We have 17 cars that scored in all events and only 6 that didn't pass tech. And excitingly, we have 3 Indian teams in the mix there that did get through tech on these occasions, and for the most part, competed on the on-track events, maybe not all of them, but that's a big improvement. So I'm wondering why these Indian teams are doing well, better in Germany, but not maybe so well in India. Are there some issues around having more time to develop and test their car before going to Germany in kind of the following year? Maybe. Does anyone know what the most successful or the most highest kind of finish rate event is? Claude, do you have any idea what it would be worldwide? Highest rate of finishes for all events in a competition.
I think it's still, I don't have a statistic on this point of view, but I think it's Japan.
It's definitely
And
Japan. Yep.
yeah, the reason for that is that there is a pre-event where each team have to they have to send a video of the car running. Then there is a pre-event, and they do that, and so they sacrifice. But it's also conservative way of working of the Japanese. But they sacrifice innovation for the sake of reliability.
Yep.
And, yeah, they have. I don't have the statistic, but I was very surprised the first time I went there that I think 70% of the car finished the endurance.
Yep, so that's what our analysis shows. Out of their teams, and I couldn't actually fit them all here, they have a larger number of teams that didn't fit on the page, close to 100, I think. 40 of them scored in every event. Many of them, a huge number ran on track, and only 18 didn't pass tech, and a large proportion of those were international teams from around Japan, but not from Japan itself. So if we're going to go about addressing this issue as a competition, I'd strongly advise we talk more to Japan about what it is about their system or their culture that allows their teams to kind of be more reliable and to pass scrutineering and to stay running on track. So this is what I wanted to share to you in our analysis of your event. This is the biggest problem that we'd like to see you try to work towards fixing. All right, before we get into the details of the project management timelining, we just wanted to do a quick audit of first impressions and professionalism. You only get one chance. So I want to talk a little bit now about professional presentation and just say to you that everything your team does in this competition and in their associated activities as either individuals or as an organization, it will reflect on your team. So please do consider carefully the choices that you make. Judges, other teams, your university stakeholders, the general public, they will make a lot of biased judgments about you based on how you choose to present yourself and the way you act. So professional presentation doesn't always cost a lot of money. It's more often just a choice whether to make an effort and be organized and be disciplined and be consistent, or not to care or to be lazy or to be nonchalant or flippant about things. So with that in mind, we've asked you just now if you could, and I know some people are probably facing some technical difficulties or limitations or didn't come prepared. Don't change any of your settings. What I want each team to do is to do a bit of a scroll through the thumbnails and just quickly score your team who is attending today. And I want you to score yourself and your teammates 1 point for each of the following. Each team member in attendance right now. So add up how many team members you've got at this event. That shows that you're willing to learn and you're trying to engage. Each kind of team or group with their camera on. So give yourself a point for each person who's on camera right now as well. And then I want you to give yourself an additional 2 points for your team for each of the following, any team member that's actually made the effort to wear their team gear today or neat kind of professional attire, which shows kind of respect and that you're representing your team and you want other people to see you as part of that. And if you have got any additional branding, if you've got kind of your virtual backgrounds with your team on there, I want you to give yourself an additional 2 points for that also. So have a bit of a click through the thumbnails, which you should be able to do, and find where all of your team members are sorted. And do a quick sum. There's not a whole lot of cameras on or people who have actually joined with camera, so it should be pretty quick.
Unfortunately, Scott, we've got about 6 or 7 or 8 people with cameras on.
Yeah. So that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. If this was our teaching, we would have booted all of those people out of here and you wouldn't still be around. But again, that's our teaching in different kind of set of circumstances. So if you can just have a look at who's here from your team and give yourself a score. And what we want you to do is to pop your score for your team in the chat. So just chat everyone, and we're going to allow you to use the chat everyone this time. And I want to know what the scores are, and I'm keen to see who has scored the highest. So if you can just put your team abbreviation and what score. So thanks for that, Greg. Oh, QUT, 8, nice work. All right, G16M is 14. That's a huge one. SRT's got 6. ISAT's got 6. UQR, nice work. if you've got multiple people on camera, you can, yeah, give yourself multiple points. Pretty interesting. MACR's got a 7. So it looks like G16M with a, was that 14? Yeah. Sanyan, good job.
They've got a lot of attendees. Looks like, yeah, looks like 14 attendees or thereabouts.
So they've got the score on numbers, is that right?
Yeah, with I think on my count 11 attendees, so
Yeah, right.
primarily numbers. Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm just going to jump to the next slide. What I would have expected to see is that there would be some sort of correlation or causation between the teams that are here in good numbers and that are presenting themselves professionally and have a team uniform and have some Zoom background slides and the performance in recent competitions. So these are some of the teams I would have expected to see kind of near the top. So I can see DJSR there with a 12. They're on my list. I made this list kind of before we even came here today, just based on the results. So I can predict who is going to be professional. Have a think about with the way that your team presents itself. If you should dress for the job that you want, basically. And if you want people to take you seriously and respect you, then please present yourselves that way. That would be my advice. Pretty impressive. Thanks everyone for that. Just on this topic, MMS have been releasing a series of final year project theses, which is basically a full project done by one student. And so we've actually got a good project on this topic around brand management. If you go to the website and look under our blog, there's a full thesis by Vincent, who's done much of our brand management for a couple of years and was very strong in this area. So he actually dedicated a lot of time and thought to setting up the MMS brand and has passed that down to people like Jack and Mel. So if you're looking to develop your team's brand a little bit more, feel free to check out that thesis, and I might just put the link in the chat. There's plenty of other interesting ones in there as well.
I can do that, Scott. It's
Oh,
okay.
if you can do that, yeah, thanks, Mike. Just going to slow down.
Got it.
All right, we're going to do something a little bit more interactive now. And it's called The Best Things in Formula Student Are Free or quite reasonably priced. So you don't have to pay a lot of money to have a lot of nice things. I've put a photo of 2 of my favorite things that are free on our team. The photo on the left-hand side is aluminium that we get from one of our sponsors for free to make our uprights and hubs and a whole lot of other things there. And chasing partnerships and sponsorship with industry is super critical and super important. We run the numbers on how much free stuff the team brings in versus its cash. And I think we get about 10 times as much stuff for free or in kind as we do any cash money. So the team basically lives and breathes on free stuff from sponsors. So if you haven't done a lot of work chasing down that kind of stuff, I would encourage you to make a big effort to do that. On the right-hand side is a photo of one of our alumni, Phil, a former chief engineer, explaining some problems with a new upright design to one of our new junior part designers. So there's another thing that is free, getting your alumni to come in and mentor and help the team provide feedback on your designs. I wanted to throw some kind of different things out there and just make you think that we're not interested in just physical things, like things that you can put on the car or services that are free. We want you to think a little bit more broader than that and come up with a big list of things that every team should be chasing. So we're going to create a series of lists. These are things that any Formula student team in the world should be able to afford or find. So I don't want titanium 3D printing or high tensile carbon fiber, really high-end stuff. I want stuff that it just requires a bit of thought and effort, or it's like minimal costs that anyone could afford. They might require a lot of effort though. So effort, we're not pricing into this. They can be concepts, they can be ideas, they can be behaviors. You can go deep, you can go meta, come at it from a variety of different angles. So what we're going to do now, Mike, if you can grab that link and drop that into the chat, we're going to share with you, thank you, an editable Google Slides link. So if you follow this link, it'll take you to Google Slides. We've set up probably about 8 or 10 different slide templates, and we want you to go navigate to whichever slide matches your team name. So the first letter of your team, go to that slide that's kind of designated as your slide. You'll find a lot of post-it notes that I've put there, and I want you to jump in there and use those post-it notes to list your favorite things that are free in Formula Student. All right, thank you for all those great ideas on the best things in Formula Student that are free that we can all do. I'm going to start with teams A, B, C. Who have we got from participants in those teams? Mike, do you want to pick somebody from participants? I'm struggling to get my participants up, sorry.
Sure. Let's start right up near the top. Team ACC, Subham. Would you like to unmute and contribute?
Anyone from ACC or maybe Excel Racers?
Yes, Excel Racers. Yes, Excel Racers. Shubham, could you unmute, please?
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah. Hi, everyone.
Hi. Are any of these yours, Shubham? Shubhmani? Yeah.
Yeah. It's Shubhmani. Okay. For us, social media posts. Loan of university vehicles and clean workshops,
right.
Team facilities. These are the few points we have with us.
Fantastic. Doesn't cost any money to keep your workshop clean, does it? Just a sweet tidy.
Yeah.
Yeah. 24/7 workshop access is a huge one that many teams don't have and is really critical. The way that we find teams commonly get that kind of access is that they are very clean, that they're trustworthy, that they look after their equipment, and that they also have very high levels of safety. All things that don't come with a big cost, but require a lot of effort and a lot of trust and a lot of maturity from the team. So those are the things that you need to work on if you want to get something like 24/7 access. Cool, thank you so much. I might jump to the next slide. So we've got teams D, E, F, and G. Can we have a volunteer from one of those teams talk to some of these entries here?
Yeah, hi, this is Aman from DJS Racing.
Great.
The most important thing which we get for free for our teams is the connections and mentorships which we get, which are provided to us from our alumni. We get to see how our design is running on the track. FS also provides us with the opportunity to get various softwares on which we design and analyze our models. Also, the team bonding sessions which we host for our team are also, I think, one of the most important aspects which we can see over here.
Fantastic. Yeah, team bonding is very important. And the software that you get access to in this project is amazing. And it's so expensive when you go off into industry. We're very lucky to have so much amazing industry standard software accessible for free. So that's super important. Good. Thank you for that, Aman. I'm going to jump into teams H and I. Can one of these teams or someone who's put in some of these unmute and just let us know what your favorite ones were? Who's that one? Michael, talking to other teams. Yeah, great one. Faculty advisor.
Hey, Aman here. Yeah, I put in some of these things. I like to say online forums and talking to other teams was quite helpful, when you can just get inputs with other teams and you can learn.
Totally. There's a lot of good information on the forums if you want to do some digging and asking questions on Facebook. And the new websites are actually quite good as well. Those articles. Any other good ones in there? Testing. Testing is a good one. Just testing your car. Once you've built the car, there's not a huge cost to testing it unless you're going through huge amounts of tires. Simulation, that's another good one. All right,
not only testing for. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Not only testing for the car, but also for your composite design or any other part that you can test on with a load on it. So to have a confirmation of what you've designed and what you have simulated before.
That's a great idea. Universities are full of lots of very highly precise and expensive test equipment like Instron machines, where you can put your samples and break them and understand the material properties and the design properties. So yeah, testing is a great one. Respecting team schedules, I really like that one. Setting due dates and working to meet your due dates. Manpower is another good one that we'll talk about in a little bit as well. Respect, cool. Okay, did you? Good work. Thanks, April. Teams J, K, L, and M. So I've had got some interesting ones here in the orange ones. Who wrote the orange ones? Can you talk to some of these orange ones quickly?
Yeah, this is Monash Motorsport from Team Kratos. I don't know about the orange ones, but we wrote the purple ones.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Talk us through those ones.
Yeah. So our team is around 5 years old, and since we are a small team, we have a lot of a huge alumni base. So we get a lot of experience from our alumni and knowledge. So that is basically free. The one more thing which interests me the most is simple manufacturing, such as lathe work, CNC machining. All that is really easy to get sponsored or get in university itself. So that is a huge plus one for us. And we also get a lot of free electronics under sample. So the industry gives us free electronics to just test, and we can simply use that in our car. And computers and internet, the university offers us a lot of free internet, so we can use that, and the softwares as we discussed. So yeah.
Awesome, thank you, Manus. I'm wondering who wrote carbon fiber rims in there on the left-hand side. They're not free. They usually cost a lot of money. I don't know who's getting free carbon rims. That's a pretty cheeky one. And dampers as well. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm Abhishek Kolekar from Mac Racing India. I wrote the orange ones. I had some trouble with my mic. That's why I couldn't unmute myself. So like collaborative software is like we use 3D Experience, which is a great collaborative software. Plus we get a lot of free stuff from Google, free meets and like unlimited 24-hour meets and everything, and otherwise documents, file sharing, etc. Free drive space. So that's a great. Google is great for that kind of stuff. Plus we get access to CAD software and analysis software like SolidWorks, ANSYS, and the other softwares like SimScale also are free.
Cool.
Our website doesn't cost much. It basically. Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, we got you.
Yeah. So our website doesn't cost much. Only what you pay, the hosting and the domain, all that cost. And a professional website can usually be made themselves. Also, social media accounts are really free, and it takes only effort to post content, and not much money is required there. Only publicity is required mostly. Then we can also get a lot of tubes and billets and also other raw materials for free. And yeah, that's it from my side.
Cool. Thanks so much. Some great ones there. Yeah, I know Monash Motorsport live in all their Google products, and the collaborative softwares make a huge difference to the efficiency of doing a lot of this work. So really good one to point out. I'm just going to whiz through these last couple of ones pretty quickly so we can stay to time. Free lubricants, very handy. Workspace, professors, courses on LinkedIn. Zoom has been really handy, yeah, particularly in the pandemic. Red Bull, whoever's getting free Red Bull, that's pretty good, powering the team. Wind tunnel testing is another great thing. Water jet machining, SimScale, yeah, 3D printers, cheap aluminium, cool. And then Q&R, comp after party, it's nice. Relationships with university staff, aircon is amazing as well, I imagine, particularly if you're in industry. I put passing grades in there. They're a nice thing to have that are actually free but require a bit of work. Someone's put comp after party in about 20 times. I like your enthusiasm. Mild steel stolen from the workshop. Yeah, that's good. Comp after party again. I put rod ends in used in tension compression. That one's for Claude's sake. Edge over others in getting internships. Cool. S&T, pretty similar. Toolbox, softwares, good parts from your old cars. Being first in line in scrutineering, that's one of my favorite things in the world. Sportsmanship, bodyworks raw material, great. And the last one, pretty similar stuff. Consistent email signatures, transportation, and more Red Bull. Cool. Thank you so much for having a go at that. And I think it's given you a good short list of things that every team can do quite easily and for free if you choose to make the effort. Mike, do you want to break now? Just give everyone a minute.
Maybe a minute, but I feel like we probably need to keep going. We're just we're down about 40 minutes. So
yep, if anyone needs to drop off or run out for a break, you can do so, but we want to keep pushing on, so we're going to do that. This is the next activity, and we're going to look at more of the essential things that we think that teams need that are not necessarily free or not necessarily available to all people. Based on the finish results in the Indian competition, we're anticipating that many teams are going without many of what we would consider these essentials. So let's assess your project's resources and gaps, with the aim being that you kind of take this away and think about how you move some of these things that are required from the we don't have access or we can never access it to we can commonly or easily access it. So I call this my hierarchy of needs for a Formula student, and it's inspired by Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is some work done in the 30s and 40s around theories of human motivation. It can be applied to Formula student teams and projects. And the pyramid, this hierarchy looks like that pyramid below there on the left-hand side. Self-actualization is right at the top, desire to be the most one can be. And actually above that, Maslow actually thought altruism, and there are other things above that that in later work he went and revised it. So there's something above the pyramid. Below that is esteem, love and beyond, belonging, safety needs, and then physiological needs. So air, water, food, Wi-Fi, power, toolboxes, that kind of stuff. So we're going to focus in on the physiological needs and to some extent the lower level safety needs for Formula student, the basics and the foundations of what you need to actually run a project successfully, to deliver a car, to compete at a competition and to finish everything and to essentially end up on the podium. It's important to note that graph on the right-hand side. That's how the personal development and the intensity of that need typically play out. You need the fundamental things first. You need those lower levels to build your pyramid up. And it's only once you've got all of those lower things that you can focus on the higher order things. So just keep that in mind. We can't go desiring to win a competition and thinking about all the glory and starting with that and focusing on that and then expecting all the lower level needs just to materialize. That's a fantasy. That's not going to happen. You're essentially, if you're doing that, what you're doing is you're trying to build the pyramid upside down. You're getting carried away with the glory and the ideas of winning, and you're not focusing on the foundation and the essentials, and you're not thinking about the time that is required and the investment in effort that is going to build your team to a point where you can achieve at those higher levels. So don't be starting at the apex and focusing on that self-actualization and the glory. And particularly don't focus on a desire to win. A desire to win is a very lazy goal. And whenever teams tell us, oh, we just want to win, we're like, that's the wrong goal to have. You need to have better, sharper goals than that. And you need to aim a lot lower and tick off those intermediary goals. So we can't neglect these foundations. So what we want to do now is focus you on what we would consider the foundations. So imagine we're looking at the bottom kind of lower levels of this hierarchy of needs. The top three levels are what we would call high performance team stuff, vision, values, culture, purpose. We have workshops on that and we could do that another time, but we want to focus today on those lower levels, what we consider essential Formula student team, physiological and in some degree safety needs as well. So right down the bottom, the blue ones are what we consider the most essential. So you need a Formula student workshop or work area. You need floors, desks, lighting, power, and Wi-Fi to be able to do your design work and collaborate with your teammates. That doesn't need to be in a room together. It can be at your homes. It can be around the campus, but you need those basic essentials. You need places to meet in person, or actually on Zoom can do it, but mainly in person. You need laptops so students can do their work and carry their information around. Computer labs are nice, but they're not an essential. You need driver gear to keep your driver safe. You need a way to transport your Formula student car around to testing and to competition, which many teams don't have. And you need a place to actually test your car before the event. Another very difficult thing in certain countries we've found. Above that, in the green, post-it notes are all of your manufacturing capabilities. So we're assuming here that most teams design and build most of the car themselves, that you're not outsourcing this to external companies or even technicians within your university, that students are doing it themselves. So you're going to need access to these basic machines. If you're an e-car, you're going to need HV stuff as well. CNC machining, engine, chassis, dyno, yeah, they're not strictly essential, but they're really nice things to have. Above that in the yellow is the skill of your students. So they're going to need to understand safety. They're going to need to machine, to fabricate, to do composites, to do electricals, and also to drive at the event. And then above that, you need a pipeline or training in the orange of ways to train your students for those skills or to hand over that knowledge. And the very highest level that we're looking at here today in this activity is your supervision, your mentoring, and your feedback from technical staff, academic staff, industry, and alumni. So we're going to take all of these things, we're going to give them to you on a slide, and we're going to get you to basically arrange them, drag them around on a spectrum of accessibility. So the spectrum of accessibility goes from, on the left, none at all or never available. You don't have these things, they've never been available, or you can never access them. They're there, but you can't access them. All the way through to, we have so many of these. We've got a whole room of 5-axis CNCs. They're open 24 hours a day and we can use them whenever we want. We've got so many that we don't even actually use them all. So that's the spectrum, and we want you to drag around these little post-it notes to show us where your resources availability is for your team. We've made a separate slide. There's a lot of slides, about 100, and find your team so that you can work together with your teammates. And we would like you just to drag around all of those post-it notes on your page and show us what access you've got to these things and what access you don't have for some of these things as well. So take a couple of minutes to do that, and we're going to see what happens. We've had an example done by Monash Motorsport that we can kind of show you as a comparison for a relatively established and kind of well-resourced team, but still with a few gaps. And we'd like to see where the Indian teams are sitting. For Kathy and Claude, this should provide an interesting kind of snapshot of the kind of foundations and the resources that these teams commonly have access to. And it might highlight some real gaping capability holes in these teams that we could maybe move to address with the universities.
So unfortunately, everyone, we're not able to provide breakout rooms, so it's difficult to have this discussion. Obviously, some of your teams may have back channel means of communicating. We're hoping that everybody can just kind of, if you've got a strong conviction about where these should be, go ahead and grab that box and drag it around. This shouldn't take more than a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I was just thinking while everyone's kind of stopped down for a little bit, does anyone want to raise their hand? And we're happy to take some questions regarding the last couple of activities, any kind of thoughts that have come to your mind on these topics?
Vinyak's got a hand up. Is it Vinyak? Vinayak.
Hi, Michael. I sent a direct message to Scott, but I'll still repeat the question. You guys mentioned that information transfer was kept second, just below the least essential.
Yeah, I think the main reason that is it's because the difference between making one car and making cars in successive years. So it's, and I think this ties back in really well with documentation that was mentioned before. Documentation is really important because everyone's going to make mistakes in this competition. The important thing is not making the same mistake twice. But for 1 year, when you're trying to build a car, the information from alumni is helpful, but there's other stuff that is more essential to getting the car built. That kind of makes sense. It's definitely still an important part, but there's other stuff there that, you know, will get the car built.
more forward-looking
Yeah.
sort of activity, and that's great for that high performance enhancement level. But in terms of getting a car directly associated with getting a car running, it's a little bit
I got
because
that.
yeah. So we've got
Thanks.
yeah. Next is Manas.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, since we all know that Formula Student is not very easy, it is quite demanding project for a whole year. So some of the students tend to leave the team halfway through the project. So what do you suggest for student retention in a team, or how do you keep students motivated for that common goal?
Can I answer by asking you another question?
Yes.
What do you do to recruit or select the students that are allowed to join the team?
Okay, so we have a recruitment process in which we conduct an aptitude test. We first ask which students are interested, and then they have an aptitude test, and then we have a one-on-one interview with each one of them.
Okay, so that's quite a thorough process, which
Yeah.
should allow you to assess the motivation and the skills and the likelihood of someone committing and staying with the team. So that's the best thing to do up front to try and make the best decision about who you allow to enter the team. Monash Motorsport typically try to maintain quite a high standard of entry so that you get only the very best people and only the most motivated people. We find that if you allow anybody who wants to join the team to join, then people don't really commit to it fully, or they're disrespectful of the opportunity to be a part of the team. If you can maintain a high standard, then you get to choose from the best, and they're generally keen to commit more time. But look, if people are still moving in spite of that, I would kind of go back to your recruitment data and see if there's any patterns in the applications of the people who are not kind of staying. Maybe there's feedback, or maybe if you do an exit interview with the people that are leaving, you can understand what are the reasons around why they're leaving. There might be common themes, and then I would look to try and pick up those common themes in your questions for future members on the team.
Yeah, I might just add to that as well, Scott. You mentioned looking at the data from recruitment. We do this every year, and we've actually identified some interesting trends where people that score really highly in our recruitment process don't stay on the team for as long. So you might find a very similar thing to that data that we found, and then you need to go back and adjust your recruitment process so that you make sure you're finding the best possible people.
The other thing I'd just like to mention is that sometimes the people who will stay on the team are not as technically capable as some other people who will eventually leave. So having something like assessing, so what Monash Motorsport does is, alongside assessing the technical ability of our recruits, we assess their personality and how well they fit the culture of the team, and how motivated they are to learn new things. And that can often play a more important factor in them staying on the team than how much they already know when they join.
We've got another question, but I would just put my 2 cents in there, that clear communication of expectations and not really, hiding what the real expectations are. Not to prejudge your process, but being upfront about the demands is often, we're often a little bit reluctant, I think, to talk about the real commitments that need to be made because it sounds a little bit daunting. And I think honesty about that is one of the best policies, I'd have to guess. If we could just move on to Subhashri.
Yeah, Subhashri.
Subhashri.
Yeah. So hi. So my question is the new recruits, right? So the tension between the new recruits and the team members already present in the team. How do we make them work as we want them to? As in, where do we start? We can actually give them a lot of technical knowledge, the base of the recruitment and all. The way we recruit them is basically uptight and it's perfect. But then where do we actually give them the knowledge we have gained after we got recruited into the team, or exactly how to move with the design procedure? Although we teach them and we feed them information about what all the softwares are there and all, we actually lack the knowledge or the expertise in how to make them, how to replace ourselves with them in the team.
It's a really, really big problem. So Formula student teams, being student based, obviously have a really high turnover compared to traditional organizations. The biggest thing is documentation. You need to be writing down every year what every single person is doing and why they're doing it. So we have a couple of methods of doing this. We have our own kind of Wikipedia, where each part designer documents the entire design process for their part. So then when the next part designer in future years comes along, they can look back at it and understand exactly why, a part is the way it is on a previous car that they can see in person.
Okay. So
this is preempting a little bit one of the main messages we want to do in one of the later activities, but really that documentation, reflection, and then execution, reflection, and then documentation is absolutely critical to maintaining this the chain of communication throughout the subsequent years.
Mike, we might kind of start reviewing these teams now. There's some really interesting ones taking place. So can we perhaps break the breakout rooms and bring everybody back if they're already here?
No, we're not in breakout rooms. We're ready to go.
Right. I'm going to share screen and we'll start reviewing. Okay, so the first one here, we've got the example from Monash Motorsport. So Mel or Jack, would you like to speak to how you've kind of grouped everything here quickly?
Yeah, so I did this before. And obviously you can see the trend here. A lot of those base and secondary level needs are way over there on the right-hand side. It's stuff that we can access all the time. There are a couple of things that are lacking a little bit. So laser cutting, CNC machining, dyno should probably be a bit higher than it is. But each team will have their own strengths, but this exercise is about recognizing what you need to improve on to help your team. So we were discussing this before, but I see a distinct lack in how much our team interacts with industry that aren't alumni of the team. We rarely go to companies and, for example, just say, hey, can you give us feedback on this design? We know this is something you do. We're students. People will love to help you with that. It's something that we need to improve on. And some safety stuff as well is becoming increasingly important for us. And then right in the middle, there's lots of training, which ties in well with the knowledge transfer that we were talking about. The theoretical knowledge is one thing, but you also have to build these cars, and making sure you have really skilled machinists and skilled fabricators year on year is super important and something we need to improve on as well.
Cool. Thank you, Jack. We've got a lot of teams here we could potentially look at, so I'm going to try and whiz through them here. And Mike, if you just want to kind of join me in commenting on anything that kind of stands out. One theme I'm noticing emerging is that not many teams have access to a testing venue or a trailer or a truck for their Formula SAE car to move it around, I assume, to competition or the testing venue. So that's something that seems to be coming up over and over again. This team has got it in the middle. If we go down to the next one, yeah, again, lacking testing and the truck. Yeah, a real interesting spread of capabilities. Student laptops, maybe not super accessible. AGH, pretty good, really good manufacturing in CNC, which is great to see in welding. A little bit weak in terms of engine chassis and dyno, safety systems, laser cutting, and skilled drivers. Skilled drivers come from having those fundamentals and then having enough build time and testing time to get out there and develop those drivers. If we go to CAD PLM systems, really lacking. That's interesting. And some of the manual machines.
Yeah, I've had a flip through it.
Yeah.
And I'm noticing things like, haven't got to it yet, but QUT, for example, are really deficient in terms of, looks like a lot of green items over on the far left. And I think we've seen that from teams like, was it Hyperion?
Yeah.
Sorry, just Hyperion racing teams. So
No
21.
We're not sure how you can run a program without a testing venue. You're building a car and taking it to competition and driving it for the first time. That's insane and scary.
So hopefully this activity is highlighting some of the key gaps, and hopefully it serves as a comparison to other teams, maybe setting of priorities and discussing with the university or with other where do you need to focus on your sponsorship, for example, to cover off some of these basic needs and get those more toward the right side of that continuum.
Yeah, I thought it might be interesting to look at another Australian team. I'm just going to get to UQ. ISAT, I'm not sure. Has ISAT had
UQ's look pretty. UQ's pretty well provisioned, it would appear.
Okay. Any other ones of interest that we can see worth having a quick look at before we move on?
Well, yeah, for example, like Vega Racing down there at 48. They're really missing again. Not to shame anyone, obviously, it's not our intent, but. Looks like a sort of a pink balance toward the right and a green balance toward the left, kind of almost an inversion, I guess, of what you might expect.
Team Octane looks pretty well provisioned on the essentials, which is good to see. Just noting that now. Nice.
A lot of good information to mine there, provided we had more time to do so.
Yeah.
But thanks everybody for contributing.
Yeah. Thank you. And look, we'll probably de-identify these and we could share them. As an outcome of this, it might be some good data for the organisers to mine. I'm just going to switch my screen share. Try to. Is that coming through? So we've got about 15 minutes left, Mike, in the formal time according to my clock. I think it might be possible to do this quickly. What do you reckon? We'll try and do
I think
really
so.
quickly.
And again, like the previous activity, I think this is really good information to have as a good comparison of teams against each other. And if this is maybe all we get done in the rest of the session, I think I'd like to get these numbers.
Sure. I think this is very important. So essentially, yeah. Oh, do you want to do this, Mike? You explain it.
Oh, sure. So we're trying to we'd like to provide a means of teams identifying the kind of experience that they have. And hopefully there's a lot of teams doing an activity like this internally already. Certainly Monash Motorsport is one that does that. And I guess speaking from, as I mentioned at the beginning of the session, I come from Honda and Toyota, and this was a very frequently used metric within those organizations. Of course, these are large central offices with satellite development facilities, and if you think of those satellite development facilities and the departments within them as teams, they had similar sort of scoring and ranking systems to identify trend and basically knowledge retention and essentially capability. So we're giving a quick and dirty calculation here today, just as an indicator as to how you might start approaching it. We wanted to, for the purpose of comparison, keep it very simple and straightforward. I would encourage teams outside of this to look at how you want to score this internally and what other sort of metrics you want to bring into it. Okay. But anyway,
it's very interesting to go back and mine some of your history of your team, look back over the past 2, 3, 4 years and actually figure out what these numbers were and try to correlate them against your team performance. We found some pretty strong correlations at Monash Motorsport with team experience.
So as we were mentioning, manpower is one of your most important resources. We started just before the discussion about recruitment and handover and things like that. So this leads into that well. So we've kind of just put down, as I mentioned, a quick and dirty experience score, which Scott has just posted in there in the chat. And we'll get everybody to, as they just did, to go in and fill out their details approximately. to understand. So here's a table with basically we've separated out into whether it's your first, second, third, fourth, etc. year on the team. So the number of members there. So that's the column 2 we'd ask you to fill in. We've put in some assumptions on the number of competitions you've experienced based on that year. For example, what we're showing here is at Monash Motorsport, those who are in second year haven't competed yet, just like the first year students or team members, I should say. But those that have been there for 3 years have done a competition and so on. And so we'd like you to maybe edit that if you need to. There's a permission issue there, Scott, it seems, in chat. While we're getting permissions sorted out and a new link sent over, I'll just talk the rest of the way through it. We've got a little bit of an average between the number of years you've been on the team and the number of competitions you've competed in. And what I'm trying to indicate here is, for example, if you've been there for 2 years, but you haven't competed yet, we're not going to weight you the same in terms of experience as those that have.
Sorry, try
bit of
that
a calculation. Yeah, bit of a calculation to follow where you multiply the number of members times their expected experience score, the Y average, as I've noted it. Yeah, great, that works. And then do a total. Eventually, what we're looking for is a quotient of that A number. The total kind of competitions by the number of people, or people competitions divided by the number of people on your team. And then we'll look at the kind of ratios after that. So if, sorry, I know that was a little bit haphazard explanation, but if everybody could follow through this calculation very quickly, maybe the most senior member on your team here today is the best one to sort of summarize this. And if anybody has an objection, go ahead and object to your team members. But if we could take 3 minutes, populate these tables and get that average team member competition experience, the B over A ratio. And then we'll talk a little bit about what those numbers kind of mean and what you can derive, what sort of information you can get from those numbers. So we'll break very, very briefly. Sorry, I was trying to monitor about 5 things as I was explaining that process. But let's grab that information and come back and talk about, how to interpret where you are now and where and basically how you want to plan moving forward.
I just wanted to note as well, Mike, I think we've put at the start there a couple of examples where we've done Monash Motorsport. Are they at the start or they're at the end?
I think they're at the start.
Yeah, they're at the start. So we've got an example there, which kind of gives you where we're at based on COVID and quite a large team. But then I've also done an example at some point in the slides there for where we're at typically without COVID, where we get to travel and do extra competitions in Europe, just to give a kind of a benchmark comparison for in good times where it would be.
Hello, sir. Excuse me.
Go ahead, Rashid.
Am I audible?
Yep.
I am Rashid Gupta from Bharat Motorsports, and I actually had a question regarding the COVID-19 situation.
Mm-hmm.
I actually wanted to ask that we have been working for the past 1 year for our vehicle, but at that time COVID-19 entered and we all went into the pandemic situation. So when we move ahead with our lives and tell someone that we have been the part of the SS team and then tell our experience with it, so along with the COVID-19 pandemic situation, will it count as a good experience that we can tell?
I think so. Yeah, I think there's still value in the experience, even if it's affected by COVID-19. Yeah, for sure.
We've
all
certainly compared to not.
So like, for example, being on Monash Motorsport during COVID-19 actually was really interesting because it was another challenge for us to face as a team. So it really made us adapt how we communicate with each other and how we do work remotely. So I think it definitely still counts as a valuable year for the team, and it definitely still counts as a year's experience on the team.
One of the best measures of an organization is how well it responds to crises, honestly. So if you've taken steps to mitigate that crisis, that the learning from that, I feel is sometimes in terms of industry employability and things like that, is actually more valuable than just being on a successful team, for example.
I definitely agree to this. Thank you, sir. And ma'am.
Rashmi's got a question.
Hi, I'm Rashmi from Steyr Racing, and I just wanted to have a brief idea about how you set internal deadlines. I mean, externally for a particular document, there'll be some deadlines given, maybe, and it's better to complete 1-2 weeks before. So, how do you think? What's the best practice to set deadlines there?
I might take this one. Unfortunately, we're probably not going to have time to get to the timelining exercise that we wanted to do.
Next. Yeah.
But you need to have a think about what's your ideal situation? When do you want to have your car ready? And you work backwards from that to be like, okay, when does the chassis need to be ready so that all the parts can go onto it for the car to be ready and driving by this date? So it takes a lot of time initially to timeline an entire year, but it's really the only way to do it, to think about everything you possibly can at the start of your kind of design cycle.
Jack, can you recommend any project management sort of, I guess, resources, not software resources, but perhaps training resources that the team has used in the past? Not to put you on the spot.
Oh, yeah, a little bit. Non-software stuff, not so much. But again, I'm going to tie it back to your process will get better and better every year as you document the things that can go wrong and how much buffer you need to leave in your timelines. And that's probably the most essential practice. Yeah.
Okay. We've got some groups kind of populating our information there. We're not quite through to calculations yet.
They're getting close.
In all instances. We've got some around the 0.5 area. We've got a couple up around the 1.5.
We've got some big teams. Inspired Carters is huge.
So maybe, given that we're about 5 minutes from the end, maybe we'll want to go on as people are continuing to populate that. Do you want to go on and talk about interpretation, Scott?
Sure, Mike. I'm just going to jump ahead to this one. So while we're doing that, if you want to explain kind of what some of these scores mean.
Sure. So this is an initial guess, and we'd really like to understand and refine this if given enough time and get the information on the teams in India. And also, but sorry, if you go back there, Scott, just what these scores might mean. I don't know why. Anyway, so if we're coming in at 0.5 to 0.6 or so, this is essentially a team that's getting a fresh flush of new members every year, and probably isn't retaining much capability in terms of the senior members, and probably not transferring information. Getting up to below 1, you're in that area where you've got some knowledge transfer, but maybe you don't have enough competition experience, or you're getting a lot of new members compared to experienced ones. It might actually relate to that issue where new members are coming in and then you get that really high attrition rate as well. Once we get in and around 1, we've probably got a team here that's moving forward and beginning to build experience and knowledge transfer, etc. And then as we get up to 1.5, we're starting to talk about an established team that has a better balance, I guess, of the upper ranges of experience, and then up 1.75, 2 and above, and we can probably have teams that are hitting 3 and 4 depending on how many competitions they're doing. These are probably good knowledge transfer, a lot of senior team members, a good recruitment mechanism, and a lot of competitions under the belt. So I guess what we're intending to do here is allow some kind of self-reference in the cohort. Understand, obviously, if you're a first or second year team, you're going to have to be in those lower ranges. But essentially what one of the things I want to talk about a little bit today is understanding where you are and really talking about the kind of 5-year term planning, and how are we going to get to where we want to be? How are we going to build, for example, this score? And this isn't the only metric. We can probably go to the next slide now, Scott. But how are we going to get to where we want to be? We need to first understand where we are. And if one of those things that we need to manipulate is to keep that score increasing and get up to that range that we're going to do it, that we want to take it, we want to understand what our recruitment strategy has to be. We can't probably stay the same size, but we can't grow too quickly either, right? We need to get students early on if they're going to be in that 4 and 5 years of experience range, because obviously if not recruiting them until third year, they've only got a couple or maybe even 1 year left before they leave. So we want to drive a couple of these points home. A broad range of experience and diversity. Obviously, if we've got just a bunch of machinists, that's going to limit us a little bit. Or if we've got people with only electrical background or something like that, that's going to limit us as well. I guess another couple of takeaways, and I know we are running out of time here, but get those competitions under the belt, make a plan and execute it to be able to compete as frequently as possible. Set realistic goals and make sure we're not letting opportunities slip by. That final point of tracking your demographics, setting targets, as I alluded to before, and have that 5-year plan and refine that plan every year. We can't just, I know we're talking about, getting the 1 year done and things like that, but the recruitment strategy is really going to lend into that, or sorry, I should say the 5-year plan is going to dictate our recruitment strategy and longer term goals. I don't know, Scott, if you want to jump in there. That's kind of
what I was jump in there and say India is a bit like Australia in that you are isolated from the other major world competitions. You only have one competition within your region every year. That is something that's plagued Australian teams, and they've kind of lacked competition experience. We would encourage you, like we've done in Australia, to add an additional informal competition event to your calendar, or maybe 2, so that teams have more of an opportunity to test and campaign their vehicles and their teams in a competition simulated environment. You'll find that it makes you much better when you actually get to the real competitions, having practiced it a couple of extra times during the year. So have a think about doing that as a group of teams, even informally. You don't need the competition organisers and Kathy and Claude to do that. You can do that on your own. And have a think that this requires effort and focus and planning and a real sacrifice to invest in the future of your team. You're going to take away time that you personally could be spending designing or working on the car to recruit and train a lot of new recruits, and you're not going to see the benefit of that training in the first year. That benefit is going to be seen by the team in future years, and then they'll go on and they'll do the same thing and recruit others, and that's how you're going to build the team, and that's how you're going to build your competition experience and your average competition experience. Don't expect to see results or return on that investment in the first year. It's a long-term proposition, but it's got to start with someone. It's got to start somewhere, or else you're going to be repeating the same short-sighted kind of attitudes, and that it's all about me and this year, and I just have to do what I can do on this car, and then once I'm done with that, I'm going to walk away and forget about it. You need to start thinking 3-5 years out for where you want the team to be in the future. All right, let's have a look at some numbers, perhaps.
All
right, have we got some interesting ones? There's so many to scan through. I might just pick a couple out. Who was that big team that I was talking about just before? Had some really serious numbers.
Wow. 65 member team in inspired carters.
IIT Bombay has got 80, 30, 30, and 8. That's huge. That speaks to me like, is that maybe too many first years? Are you letting anybody who wants to join? You've got a big demographic drop off. You're going from 80 to 30. So maybe you have a lot of very superficial members initially, and then you kind of get rid of most of them. That may be a big demand in terms of managing all of those kind of 80 members and not getting the value from them in later years. Do you want to jump to another one, Mike? Which one?
Sorry, I was moving up the list. I found one before I want to speak up, but now I've lost it.
Was it inspired carters?
Inspired carters. What slide?
I had mentioned that they were a large-ish team, maybe medium-sized team. Actually, now that I look at it.
Orion Electric is quite a big one as well. Maybe pushing, what, 80 members?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. And that's a really good kind of metric for that competition experience. Is that because, are you competing overseas as well?
Yeah, we do compete at Formula Student in Germany.
Germany too, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really healthy, and you've got a good demographic. You've got, you appear to have good retention from first year through to second and third year. So that looks like quite a healthy demographic. And then when your fourth years leave, you've got a good kind of demographic kind of coming behind them to replace those people. So that would be, yeah, kind of where I would be advising most teams to be aiming for a distribution kind of like that. Very good.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Do we have UQ in the mix?
UQ's in there. They've got a ratio of about 1 with appeared like a big drop off from first year to second year, but I'm not sure what the recruiting strategy is. Maybe they could speak to that.
Is UQ under Q or under U?
Under U.
Okay. What slide, if anybody is near?
95.
95.
So 97 members on the team. They've got 63 first years, 10 second years, and 20 third years. Could somebody from UQ just speak to your demographics there?
To that one?
Yeah, sure. We had a lot of issues recruiting last year during COVID because our recruitment starts basically, it started a week before the lockdown in Brisbane. So we lost it all last year, and it was really hard in the middle of the year as well. But this year's goal, I guess, was to really kind of make up for that. And we've kind of put a lot of focus in teaching the new members and trying to retain them much better. So we had a lot of internal thinking about that, I guess.
Cool. Yeah, you're really trying to backfill with those first years to cover that demographic blip, that gap in that second year, which is going to hurt you in another year's time when they start coming through into senior leadership positions. It's going to be, yeah, a bit of a lull. But yeah, several teams have had those issues in the past. I know MMS have. Cool. Thanks for that, UQ team. Yeah, Inspired Carters, are they around? And which slide number are Inspired Carters on?
33.
33, cool. I'll be there in a second. Yeah, if you can talk to your really interesting demographics. Oh no, the numbers are a bit lower than I expected. 65. That's pretty healthy as well. 24 first years, 22 second years, 13 third years, and a few fourth years. That's really good. And competition experience around a 1.27 number. That's quite healthy.
Thank you, sir.
Well done. And maybe if we can just pick one more of interest. I'm just going to do a bit of a scan. DJS look pretty good. A lot of first, second, and third years. We realize that some programs, 5 advisors, that's really good. Lots of advisors in the mix. Some of the programs might be 3-year programs as well that we're talking about. Yeah, so our advice would be to teams to have a think and just to monitor these demographics and the experience of your team. And also you can use it to project. So you know who's going to be finishing at the end of the year, and you can realize what kind of hole those people are going to leave on the team and be starting to plan and backfill for those positions ahead of time. So something you should, yeah, monitor and just stay on top of. And do as many competitions as you can. So we're running a little bit over time now, Mike. I thought, should we just mention what our last activity was going to be? We're not going to have time to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
But I just wanted to kind of introduce it and encourage teams to have a think about it. And Jack, did you do the Monash Motorsport version of it?
Yeah, I did. Yep.
Okay, so
I think it's the very last slide in this set.
So the last activity we've entitled Time is Not on Your Side. When are you choosing to form your student and why? What we wanted to highlight, this was the timeline that many teams choose for their project. We wanted to challenge you on why you select the timeline. What are the drivers and limitations of this timeline? And we know there are some quite serious ones, and there's some really good reasons why you do things when you do them and maybe why you can't do them earlier. But we wanted to challenge you to consider, can you break free of some of these limitations, or can you renegotiate them to give yourself just more time. We also wanted to understand how you prioritize different stages of the project, and whether those current priorities were working for you, and how you would go about dramatically shifting them. What we were expecting to see with the Indian teams looking at the completion rate was to find that probably, and this is an assumption, that teams were not planning for enough testing time with the car. And so the car either wasn't finished, or it ran late, or it wasn't reliable, or things were overlooked and they weren't found until too late. And that's probably resulted in you not getting on track at competitions. That's what we're expecting. The way we were going to try and get you to think through that was to throw at you this timeline, and we've put in the dates for Formula Bharat. They're January, assuming kind of like a typical season where you would finish a competition in January 2021 and maybe go about planning your recruitment, design, build and testing. We would have liked to have seen you plan that out for your competition. And this is something that you could do if you're in the European season, just move the dates around a little bit. And we just wanted to see how teams allocate the proportion of testing to build to design and when you do your recruitment. So that's what we were going to do. We're not going to have time for it, but feel free to get a copy of the slides, which we'll share with you if you want to do it anyway. But Jack, I might just get you to talk to what MMS do as an example. Where is the last slide in which deck? Sorry, in the other deck.
In the activity deck. Yeah, so obviously the main competition we go to is SA Australasia, and that's in December, but it's pretty much the same principle. What we usually do is have a little bit of time off over Christmas, and then the team comes back ready to spend a big portion of our time before we go back to uni designing. So you can see there, January, February, and kind of half of March is all design period for us. An ideal situation is we're going into the university semester with all the theoretical design of our car done, because of course, during semester, you are much more time poor as a team. And we're also going to be starting recruitment before semester and have it finalized either beforehand or kind of the first week of semester. Then we're manufacturing the car for most of those kind of first 3 months of the university year, little break off for exams, and straight after that, we want our car to be driving. This portion in the middle of the year between semester 1 and semester 2, per the Australian timetable, is really, really important, because it's 4 or 5 or 6 weeks of uninterrupted time that the team can be spending kind of all day, every day doing Formula Student. And we want to be banking consistent testing sessions by the end of that time period. All of semester 2 should be testing for us. Little break before competition, and then competition first weekend of December.
Thanks, Jack. So this is one of the major revelations that our team made to be able to perform consistently and at a high level, is just to allow more testing time than just about anybody else in Australia at the time. Some of the Europeans operate on similar schedules and will be out testing quite a bit. But yeah, this has been one of our key advantages, but it requires a huge amount of discipline to actually finish a competition and come back 2 weeks later after, on January the 3rd, and sit at university in the middle of summer with your 40 or 50 team members and design the new car while everybody else is at the beach and having barbecues and having a lovely summer break, and you're in the labs. That's pretty tough. The other thing is we're only recruiting the new team members, which is indicated here in February. The team have already recruited and done applications for the leadership for this new team. They do that in, when would you do that, Jack? September,
Absolutely.
October?
So we already have our timeline planned for who's going to be replacing Mal and I. We haven't decided on the people yet, but we're going to open those applications at the beginning of August to have these people selected midway through September or the start of October, so they can work with us and kind of ease into their new role and experience the competition with the current kind of senior management of the team before then handing over straight after competition. It is so much to take on, and you want to make the transfer from kind of regular team member to a management role as smooth as possible for these people.
And then that new management team is ready to pick up the reins and run and drive the team, and you don't have 2 months of downtime while the team is on hiatus, without essentially headless and without a leadership until people kind of get back together and marshal themselves. So that's kind of what we'd recommend. It's pretty aggressive, but we'd be interested to have teams compare their approach and their experience and their outcomes. Yep.
Sorry, I'm just having stability issues there. I've got to stop the share.
All right, so I was just going to share, do we share a link to that one?
You did, yeah.
I did. So that's there if you want to have a go at that, but we won't hold you to it because it's pretty late here on a Friday afternoon. The final thing that we're going to do is to take an extra 15 minutes to jump into some breakout rooms. It was going to be myself and Mike, and I think Mel and
April.
Mel and April.
Well, I'm all set to go with breakout rooms.
Yeah. We'll jump in there, and yeah, we'll just welcome you to come and have a chat. And if you've got any further questions to us, I've probably got about another 15 minutes that I can hang out for, and we'd be happy to have a chat with you there. But thank you so much for coming along today, and hopefully we have proposed some interesting questions and challenged you on some of your assumptions about the competition and inspired you to kind of rethink some of the approaches, and we'd love to see you take this away and improve your performance in future years. And we'd love to see you at Monash as well if any of you are interested in coming over and being part of our team. We'd love to have you down here. So thanks everyone for coming along, and we'll jump into rooms, Mike, when you're ready, I guess. Or
yeah, for everybody's reference, the advisors, that's myself and Scott. Business and operations are Monash Motorsport team members. I'm not sure exactly what the division was in the end there. The organizers is your Formula Bharat contacts, Kathy et al.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Thanks, Claude.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Michael. Really appreciate this.